First of all, those who come back, it's always a pleasure to see familiar faces, and it's always a pleasure to see new faces, of course. So welcome, 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 everyone. I'm very honored to have you here. Thank you so much for carving out some time out of your day to join me. And today we're going to talk about our self-image. There's so much to say about it, actually.
Mm.
Um, but I'm gonna try to keep it just around an hour. So let's see what we can do and where we can jump. Um, there's gonna be plenty of opportunities in between that I'm gonna ask you if everyone is with me, if you get it well, and it's just gonna be. I'm going to do the talking, of course. It's a presentation, but you're going to have the chance as well to intervene. So my goal is, of course, that you get it right. Otherwise, it's kind of useless. So yeah. So welcome, welcome. I'm very excited about this masterclass because it's something that I've been working on in my work always. It's been a topic that has been coming back again over and over and over again. It's been my focus in my work. And it's an ever evolving thing and never ending. So it's very interesting. For those who don't know me, I am Michelle. I am a certified coach and photographer, and I picked up my father's camera actually at the age of more or less 16, and I loved it. I loved it so much that I decided to study photography, and it changed my life, and it keeps on changing my life actually. Photography, I think it's a very magical thing. And it's a very yeah, it's very easy. It's for everyone can use it. It's very accessible. And even now more than ever, right? So I still love photography. Um, and it plays such an important role in our lives. It's plays an incredible big role in our lives.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, I just loved my father's camera, and then it was much later that I started working as a photo editor, and at some point I started working professionally as a photographer more or less 15 years ago, and I'm convinced that it all starts with the self-image. it's it's the basic, it's the base of our lives, of everything. It's so important. So that's why I decided to organize this masterclass. Um, but first, I want to introduce you a little bit about my little journey and how it all started. Actually, my focus on the self-image, um, like actually working with it. That was when I was working as a photo editor. I actually, yeah, it was a totally different job than I anticipated. It was I was working all the time. Um, yeah, day and night. That's nature of a newspaper. I learned a lot. I learned a lot. And I was very grateful for that, but I was burning out quickly as well. So I looked into different jobs, but I couldn't find any other job. Always when I applied, I received the news, hooray, you're in our top three, but we didn't withhold you. So, and that sounds maybe familiar. I guess that it's not just me who received a message like that. But anyways, at some point, I didn't know what the next step was until back in 2010, the earthquake of Haiti. You might remember.
Mm.
There was a huge earthquake in Haiti, and suddenly the newspaper where I worked at, the atmosphere shifted totally. Everything changed in such a way that yeah, instead of looking at newspapers, different newspapers as seeing each other as competitors, all of a sudden, all the newspapers started to work together. The news channels started, everyone collaborated. And yeah, in a whim, actually, we collected so much money. It was unbelievable. So I was just watching that and I thought, wow, this is all because of the power of an image, right? Because
Mm.
without those images, nobody would have had the capacity to really see the impact and feel it. So that hit me. That hit me, and it hit me so hard that I did quit my job. And I decided to move to Nicaragua. I bought a ticket and I flew to Nicaragua, and I started using photography as a vehicle to empower people and to help them to see the world and themselves differently. So I'm just gonna share my screen for a second right now. Let me see. It's always, here we go. Can you see this?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I went to Nicaragua and I founded Heroes. I was working with street children, and I called them my heroes. Um, and I gave them cameras, and through workshops, we were investigating ourselves and the world, and just to change perspectives. And then simultaneously, I was taking images of them. Yeah, and it was actually a very, very enriching time. It was spectacular. It changed my perspective in many, many ways, of course. Yeah, they're super vulnerable, but extremely powerful. And there, actually, I realized that we are way more powerful than we understand. So that was a big, big shift for me, actually. Um, so yeah, when I came back to Belgium, then I collected those images and I created like an exhibition in public spaces and like a classroom that I built, and I had my classroom in, this is in the railway station in Ghent, my hometown, and I collaborated with schools, and I invited school te pupils, and I taught them about the street children, and it was my way to motivate them through the stories of the street children to make the most of their school. So yeah, that was so amazing. I got a little bit addicted to Nicaragua, so I went back, and I that time I went back and I started to live with families in the slums. And instead of focusing on the poverty, I focused on what I felt. I felt nothing but love, faith, and courage. And yeah, like the purity of uh, human beings. And I felt like, yeah, it was unbelievable. It shifted my perspective, the image that I had about myself again, but also about my family and my role in my family. And then I came back to Belgium. I created a book, the Love, Fate, and Courage stories. I collected them, and I installed those images in the city center, in the city where I lived at the time, and I installed them in the windows of luxury shops during the month of December. Yeah, just to point out the real luxury, right? And to me was the real connections, and yeah, yeah, the pure human love, yeah, the real us, the big self, and not the little self. So jumping forward, a big jump forward, at some point when I left Nicaragua, at some point I moved to the States, and then I studied at university, and there I encountered a very challenging time for myself initially, because in Nicaragua, everything looks so different. And then you anticipate, and it's kind of, you adjust yourself easily, although it's because it's so obvious that you have to adjust yourself. But when I lived in the States, it was not obvious at all. Everyone looked the same, everything looked the same, but it was totally different world. Everyone thought completely different. So I felt like I had to reinvent myself. It was very challenging. I was the only person from Europe at the time too. So I started to work with video and sound. And here you can see I started to take images of myself. I printed them in different ways. And here it's a little difficult to see maybe, but it's a projection of an image through a wheel that is projected on the wall. And then here on the floor, I had a video, moving video and sound. But just to show you that I was working on the self-image again, just change and shift and to adapt and grow. Yeah, and I invested in many ways, did a lot of prints. And then, yeah, my work was published internationally. I won awards. My work has been exhibited in worldwide, but I felt that something was lacking, nevertheless. So I wanted to expand myself and to give something even more to my clients and the people I worked with. So I decided to have a coaching practice, to add coaching to my practice. And so now I call myself a self-image coach and photographer. And I use the power of photography and coaching to help others, you, to break free and empower you to make your life and career a masterpiece. So actually my art is more flipped over into something bigger, the art of life. So yeah, as you can see, to me, it's all about the self-image. I'm convinced that yeah, it all starts there. So far, I don't know if anyone has a question, or shall I move on? Anyone? You good?
Yeah. I think so.
Okay,
I've got questions, but I'm going to save them. Sort of
but are you gonna
general
save it?
questions. Yeah.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, whenever you feel like it. So first of all, talking about self-image, there's many people who don't even know what self-image is. Um, so I would suggest just to unpack what self-image is. Actually, it's just the way you see yourself, right? Your self-image.
Yeah.
It can be literally how you see yourself in the mirror, but I think even more important is mentally how you see yourself. Um, it's the idea, the opinion you have about yourself, the blueprint of yourself. It's kind of a roadmap of where you go in life, right? Um, it's you use your self-image actually to develop a picture of you always wanted to see, a picture of yourself. Um, any questions here, maybe, or comments?
I'm just curious about just the notion of the sense of self in relation to, because you're not really talking about other people yet, but I feel like that's such a critical part of, like, we don't really exist in a vacuum. We exist through a dynamic series of relationships with friends, family, coworkers. It's constantly shifting, and you're constantly dealing with challenges of other people's frustrations with themselves, with you, with life. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's for me a lot of, I find you're constantly shifting gears depending on what interactions you're having. And some people, I think it's it's hard to have a good sense of self because they can kind of just be so dominating. I've struggled in my life with being attracted to people who have just very dominant personalities, and it's hard to kind of like assert your own identity, when
Mm-hmm.
you're working together, collaborating, different kinds of projects.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that sense of
Interesting.
identity is interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting that you bring that up. Well, I would suggest that we just hold that thought, and we're gonna come back to it. Is that fine with you?
Sure, sure.
Um, so, um, yeah, when I worked as a photographer and I took portraits of people, I actually I always did the same routine, right? I have my routine to put people at ease, to make people, for me, it's very important to make people feel seen, to feel comfortable, to be themselves. It's very important to me, always. Um, and I have my specific approach to do that. And it's a standard approach I do for everyone, the same approach. But what I realized, which was very interesting, was that I had like two groups of people. There was one group that was happy with their images. Um, they they were just like, of course, they like one image better than another, right? Because of the setting and so on. But overall, they were satisfied. And then there was another group who was always asking me things like, yes, for example, they were not really satisfied. It was not always outspoken, but sometimes it was. Sometimes people ask me things like, I love this background, but I love the expression of my face in that image better. Is there a way to combine? Don't you have images of me looking that way there? It was like always something. Um, so I found it really, really interesting and fascinating. Started to really investigate what was going on there. And what I realized was that the people who were satisfied with their image were satisfied with their self-image, like physically. And the ones who were not satisfied had issues with how they looked like. And it was impossible to make a good image because the image they had about themselves was not, yeah, it was a distorted image. So, yeah, that was a very interesting. So, yeah, that made me thought, why is your self-image so important? Um, it's so important because your self-image is the product of your past experiences. It's the failures, the successes, humiliations, triumphs. It's the way people react to you, especially in early childhood. And then from these experiences, you create a picture of yourself, right? Um, but most importantly, you believe that is a true picture of yourself, although that picture might be false. Um, so you can have literally many pictures of yourself in albums, on your phone, everywhere. But the most important picture is your self-image, because that's the one that you believe that is true. You believe it enough that you even base your actions on that truth of the image you have of yourself. So, uh, it's it's a portrait actually that you took about yourself, um, how you see yourself. Um, yeah, it's the only image that matters. And of course, it can make you feel, depending on how you see yourself, it makes you either confident or insecure. Um, for example, if you see yourself as a chubby person, um, it doesn't matter if you are in reality slim or chubby, you'll act as a chubby person. Um, yeah, it doesn't matter how other people see you, um, because they don't make you act, you make you act. You have the control of what you do. So if you see yourself as a failure, you'll act as a failure. Um, so how do you know that your self-image is true, right? Um, just be carry just because you carry it with you all the time doesn't mean it's true. Um, but if it isn't true, then we must change it. Um, and if you believe that's not possible, some people believe that it's not possible to change your self-image. Well, I am the living example sitting in front of talking to you that you can change your self-image all the time, actually. It's something that doesn't have to be fixed. And but what it requires is insight. That is important. Without insight, you can't change it. Um, and we all know that our behavior is controlled by our mind, right? The brain tells us what to do, but the brain tells us what to do in the future based on the knowledge of the past. The brain is a great computer, but the computer can't think in the future. It's in the present and in the past. So it's limited. But nevertheless, this computer we carry with us doesn't know the difference between what is imagined or what is true. Doesn't know the difference. So to change your self-image, you can imagine yourself anyhow, any way you want in the future. You can imagine yourself based on your failures or based on your successes. It's a choice. It's a conscious choice that we have to make. But all too often, people just destroy their imagination by picturing situations of the past in which they have failed. So yeah, it's up to us to pick up what we will receive. Any comments here? Any questions so far? Shall I continue? Okay. I hope I don't make you
There's a lot to digest there, Michelle.
I know. You know me, right?
One thing occurred to me is the heart and the emotion that you're experiencing when you're looking at yourself in the mirror, say, or in a photograph. Does that? I know that it's not. It's not logical with the way the mind processes stuff. It's an emotional response, and I just get a bit confused. So I don't know. What I'm trying to say really is the true image has to encompass the heart and the mind from your previous experiences.
Yeah.
For me, anyway. And going back to the photography, the mindful image that you're projecting through the camera, it also comes from the heart. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but most of the time, like unconsciously, what we're gonna do is we're gonna use our brain to see
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
And then we're gonna just respond, react on something. And if we're not conscious, we're just gonna go automatically on what we are used to or
Oh,
comfort.
I see. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And our comfort can be thinking in the future, in your imagination, like not based on the past, or most of the time, unconsciously, you, for example, somebody ever said something to you about your nose. Oh, you have like a crooked nose, and you took it as the truth. And from now on, your nose is like, even if it's not true, but it's stuck in your mind, and that formed your image you had of yourself. Now I'm talking about just physically, but
Yeah.
actually is even way bigger, right? You can't do this. Who do you think you are? Things like that. Things that other people actually project on you, and that you take as you
Okay.
while it isn't. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, I've got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see that.
Okay. So yeah, it's a little complicated. It might be a little complicated at first. So the areas that impact your self-image, what are they? It determines how you see yourself, determines how much money you make. If you believe that you are not good in math, for example, you will not, if you really believe that, you will not be good in math. If you really believe that you're not good in running a business, you will not be able to run a business well. If you believe that your well-being, your business, how much money you make, the quality of your relationship, it impacts everything, really everything. If you have, for example, you earned in previous jobs, just saying something, 25K a year, and this is your comfort zone. So you shift to another job, but this is what you're used to. And unconsciously, you will stay in that comfort zone and you will do everything. Even if you gain more, you will fall back into that old belief of yourself that you're worth 25K. So it's extremely important to really investigate ourselves and where we can tweak our self-image. But of course, it's not easy because we do have a lot of blind spots, right? And unconsciously, we're not aware of many things. So let me take you back again to my adventures after Nicaragua to illustrate. So when after my adventure in Nicaragua, I decided to move to the States. And I decided to move to the States, and I decided to move to New York City. And my goal was to strengthen my photography skills. That was my goal. And I was convinced that was my goal. I was going to go for it 100%. I was going to go for it so much that I decided to give up my apartment, and I eliminated all my stuff because I could not carry my stuff in my 2 arms. It was way too much. So I had to eliminate everything except for the things that I could carry in 2 bags because I have 2 arms. And I moved to New York. So my goal was to strengthen my skills as a photographer. And I knew more or less what I wanted, but how it would be built, I had no clue. It was very hard to imagine, but I imagined that it would work out. I imagined that I would meet the right people, and I was very focused. I had no plan B, and I really, really believed it would work out. So I really actually trusted the process. And then, of course, the only thing I had an apartment. That was good. But other than that, I didn't have anything set yet. So I explored the city, and it wasn't that difficult to find out that ICP, International School of Photography, was like a huge hit place to go to achieve my goals. And I subscribed myself for a class. And actually, at the time when I got there, I was lucky, I guess. It was just a time where you could have a guided tour. And people gave information about school and everything. And I had an easy access to all the workshops and the courses. And I doubted between two workshops. I picked out something for a week because it was expensive. It was all I could afford. But I doubted, and I went home with the two courses. And back home, I did some research on the teachers. And it was clear to me there was one teacher, and I really wanted that teacher. So I went back to school. I told them, I figured it out. I want this course with that teacher. And they said, oh yeah, I'm so sorry, but we canceled that class for a reason I forgot. I was, of course, disappointed, but I subscribed myself for the other class. And I got home and I thought, that teacher that I wanted to meet, I'm gonna email him and see what comes out of it. And I emailed him. Turned out, going back and forth, turned out that he was the teacher of the class I subscribed myself, because he was replacing the other teacher who was ill. So turned out I fell into the class that I initially wanted. And that person became my mentor. It was an incredible honor to have that teacher as a teacher, mentor, a Pulitzer Prize winner. He connected me with National Geographic photographers. He believed in me. It was unbelievable. My goal to strengthen my skills as a photographer suddenly shifted. It was unbelievable. Yeah, it was incredible. And during that week, one of the assignments that we had was it was around 5 o'clock in the evening, was the end of the day, and he said, well, tomorrow I want to see images. You have to talk to someone you never saw before, talk to a stranger, invite yourself to his apartment, his apartment, and tomorrow I want to see all the images you created. I was so I freaked out initially. I was like, what? Talk to a stranger and invite myself at their place. Anyway, I felt like, yeah. But on the other hand, I thought, I'm here now. I just have to do it. So I created like a wonky plan in my head, and I jumped into the subway with an idea to go somewhere. But when I was in the train, I noticed a woman with her child, and there was that little voice in me that said, talk to her. I had to talk to that woman. I started the conversation, and before I knew, I was taking images in her apartment and was spending the whole night together with her. So when I was there, on top of it, she turned out to be a doula. I had no idea what a doula was, and I became so intrigued by everything that I decided to really investigate. What is a doula, midwives, what do they do? And then I thought, oh my God, what are the odds? I'm here starting from scratch again. And I'm now connected with women giving birth, new life. So I thought I have to do something with that. And I started connecting with other doulas, midwives, and I ended up taking images of a person who gave me permission to take pictures of her in her apartment in Brooklyn while she was giving birth to her beautiful son. Um, and we're still friends. We never met before. The first time I saw her was while she was in labor.
Wow.
She trusted me. And yeah, it was just unbelievable. So here we go. My goal to strengthen my skills as a photographer, right? And then afterwards, still in New York City, I wanted to push myself a little further. And I decided to go into artist residency. And at the end of the residency, I showed my work, my images, and someone came to me and she said, you know, you should go to Alfred. I had no clue what she was talking about. Alfred, I thought it was a person. Turned out it was a university, upstate New York. And while going with the flow I thought, well, let's check it out. It was at that time, Alfred University just was, it was summer break, and they just had another artist residency. And I took advantage of subscribing me to 1 week. They had 4 weeks, but 1 week I only took because it was too expensive, 4 weeks. And I subscribed myself to that summer school. It was printmaking. And then once I was there, my professor was, he was like, printmaking professor, he was like, oh, you're so talented. I think you should stay here for the 4 weeks. And I said, you know, I can't afford it, but that's no problem. He said, nobody has to know you're here. So I stayed for 4 weeks without paying the 4 weeks. And um, and while I was there for 4 weeks, my professor said, you know, I think you should study here. But I thought, well, that's a bridge too far. I mean, you can't push me. I hate schools. I don't like it. I'm not going to do that. But he kept on repeating over and over and over again. And I was so sick of it. So at some point, I thought, you know, you can't subscribe yourself anymore. It's too late. I'm just gonna fill in the paperwork. I'm not gonna be accepted anyway. It's too late to subscribe yourself for the school. But yeah, I did the paperwork. I left. I went back to New York City, and after a while, I received a message. You're in. You're. So I was accepted at the university, and they advised me the day before school started. And that's where I started investigating my self-image, the images that I showed you before. So I'm just telling you this just to show you, if you imagine the future, and you really believe it, you really believe in yourself, and you motivate yourself, you set yourself a goal, you act upon it, and you commit, it becomes reality. And is it easy? It's not. It's totally not easy. But I believe that everyone possesses the possibility to use their imagination for success or failure. It's up to us to make that choice. But is it easy? It's not easy. Of course, during my I make it sound like it was easy, but I had my moments. Of course, I had my moments that I was during the process. I was questioning myself. When I worked, for example, with my mentor, I thought, sitting with people from National Geographic, looking at my work, I thought, Michelle, what are you doing here? Who do you think you are? You're not good enough. They made a mistake. This cannot be possible. Um, this is not right. You know the sentences in your head, right? You're not good enough. You're not rich enough. You're not beautiful enough. You're not smart enough. All that stuff. But actually, what I understood was that those moments of breakdown, when you break down, are actually, you can flip the breakdown into a breakthrough. It's just an indication that shows you that you're at the ceiling of you pushing yourself out of your old habit. And it's just a reminder that what your old belief used to be. So you just have to push yourself through it. So you can break through the breakdown. Does that make sense?
Mm.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, how has your self-image shaped your path where you're now? In my case, another example, when I was a child, I was actually chubby. And everyone in the family was like squeezing my legs and arms and my I was chubby and everyone's like, and my sister and my brother were very thin. And as everyone liked to squeeze me all the time and talked about it in a kind way, but I understood it as I'm fat. And I can guarantee you, it took me, I don't even know how many years. For my mom, it was just a nightmare going to buy clothes. I was, each time when I was trying a pants, each time my first reaction was, I'm too fat. My mom just drove her crazy. And until some point, years and years and years, I had the idea of myself that I was fat, chubby, not fat, chubby. And at some point, I looked into albums and I looked at images of myself, pictures, real pictures, and I realized I was so slim. But in my mind, I really saw it. Finally, in my mind, I was chubby, but I had proof that it was. So it took me, sometimes takes a year to see something to be able to flip it. So it's really not easy. But hey, photography changed it, right? Same thing with sometimes it takes less time to flip things. Again, my brother and sister, they were studying Latin and Greek, and I didn't. I was a level, they were way higher. The level they studied was way higher than mine. And I felt a little bit, well, less intelligent at the beginning, let's say, to put it in a nice way. But at some point when I was 13, I failed at school and I had to shift gear and go another level lower. And at that point, then I felt like not really smart, like a little stupid, because I compared myself with them, right? And I remember my mom asked me, what do you want to study? And I was like, I don't want to study. I just wanted to go to the University of Life and didn't want to go to school anymore. But she reminded me, when you're 13, by law, you have to go to school. So she decided, because I didn't come up with anything, so she decided to put me in hotelier school for good reasons. You speak your languages, you will be able to cook really well, and then afterwards you can do whatever you want. So I did, but I didn't. I liked cooking, I must say, but the studying, I really was not motivated at all, and I didn't make any effort till some point that I failed again at school. And I had to shift gear again, and I had to redo my year. And that was the aha moment for me that, oh my God, Michelle, there's something that has to change here. But my image I had about myself before was so low on that level, on that point, that I thought I don't have to do any effort because I'm not smart, until I shifted it. So yeah, another example. Um, so just to say that you have to go through all the discomfort and all the limiting beliefs, and work through all that in order to become your future image. If you want to change your self-image, you have to go through, yeah, all that stuff, which is not always, it's confronting at times. But as I showed you, photography is a very great tool, to help you, to assist you actually, to enhance your self-image. I used it many, many times. I keep on using it. And what I found is that creating self-portraits supports you to see yourself in a different, new way. You literally can take images of yourself from an angle that you normally can't see. Also, you detach yourself from that vision, just you and the mirror. When you see yourself on a screen or on a print, you detach yourself from that. It helps you to get to know yourself, because when you take images that I hated initially, I hated taking images of myself. I had to learn to take images of myself. Like really consciously taking images of myself a whole session. I had to learn to do that, but I embraced it. I started to embrace myself fully, things that I didn't like about myself. So I transformed myself by doing this. It it showed me different nuances of myself, different versions of myself. Yeah, it made me feel accepting myself, and just the way I am. It shows you who you are. Yeah, it's very, very transformative. And it also can spotlight things that you can't see about yourself. And equivalent to photography, so is journaling. It's exactly the same thing. Journaling, you detach yourself. You can learn about yourself. It gives you new insights. And on top of it, words are very powerful. They empower your thoughts. So again, better be mindful what words you use. It provides you a way to process your emotions. It helps you to figure out the next step. And the good thing about it is that you don't need anything. You just need a pencil and a piece of paper. And you can take that with you. And you can do that anywhere, anytime. So, any questions so far?
There's something about confidence that I'm kind of curious about, because it seems like you've come through these situations where you've challenged yourself and you didn't really know what was going to happen, and then something positive allowed you to have more confidence. Um, like I just think in relation to journaling, I've always struggled, and I used to keep a regular diary, but I sort of stopped at some point because I just felt like it was so self-indulgent. And I looked at other friends' journals and I felt like, oh, they have such an interesting inner life. My stuff is just really, I didn't really want to share it with anybody anyway, but it just was embarrassing. And now I just feel like there's a part of me that's kind of shut down, and that sense of like being able to kind of communicate with yourself. Like if you don't have that sense of welcoming, I don't know. I'm just kind of curious, like how that process can shift.
Well, the only thing I can say is it takes time. And it's just the same thing as we tend to forget. When we were young, you learn to ride a bike. How many times do you fall? All the time. But you get up and you get on the bike again. But you don't think about it until you ride a bike. And it's exactly the same process. The only difference now is when we get older, we tend to think about it. And then we don't have enough compassion about ourselves. We don't have enough patience for ourselves. We're not good enough, and we destroy ourselves. And that is based actually on old beliefs or things that we heard from others as well. When it's not fast enough, oh, you're so slow. Um, when are you going to do this now? Aren't you there yet? Look at everyone finished, and what about you? So it all comes from what other people put in our plate, and we make it as our truth, who we are. And it's exactly the same thing. Um, writing, taking images, writing a journal. In the beginning, and it's very, you're from the States, so I learned in the States, fake it till you make it. I never used that expression here, but what I did, I was many times faking it till I made it. Until you get some point that you don't have to fake it anymore. You just became it. Does that answer your question?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, I think that just I'm interested in different voices that we have within ourselves. I think there's for me, the creative process is trying to get some of those dialogues out, sort of externalize them and try to work out like what is it that's kind of causing you to withhold trying things, exploring different possibilities. I feel lucky in a lot of ways that I have got a lot of encouragement, but I don't feel like I don't really have a lot of faith in myself. And I don't know. It's a process that I think people have to kind of work through. I'm very like community oriented in a way. I really try to work with other artists and enjoy trying to do some teaching things. I'm not really a formal instructor, but I feel like it's through those kinds of dynamics that you can kind of get at some of your own internal kind of mishaps and dysfunctional processes.
Totally, totally. I totally agree. And I can relate to you art-wise. That's what I've been doing. I've been processing and like peeling off my old beliefs over and over and over again to come to the core of who I am. And I used the vehicle I used was art for me, but that can be whatever. But that's my language. And I believe it's a very, very good instrument to do that because it requires to be very honest with yourself. And if you're very honest with yourself, then the voices in your head become very loud because it's your ego. It doesn't want to. It's like a conflict between your higher self, let's say, your bigger self, and your lower self, your ego. And your small self is afraid of that big self and is shouting very loud. And those are the voices. But you have to keep on grinding and grinding and grinding. And like I said, all the layers, and it's always going to be something else that's going to come up. But it's like you have to uncover the diamond until it's shining again. Does that, and I believe that is, everyone has to go through that process, the self-doubt. And some people are lucky that they are encouraged to be really themselves, but I think that's the minority. I think most of us have issues with our like real self-image. I think it's very nature of humans. So yeah, and that's something else. Nobody, well, I'm not going to say nobody, but it's not something that you learn at school. When you are empathic on top of it or sensitive, I felt, I'm going to speak for myself, I felt like weird because I felt things and people always were like strong and very outspoken, and I felt intimidated by them. And now I'm like, it took me years to flip that. And I'm not saying I'm there yet. I hope to evolve and grow and forever until the end. But it's getting better and easier. You get more confident. But yeah, like I said in the beginning of the masterclass, it has been my focus forever, my self-image. So of course, then yeah, that helps. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, a little bit, I think.
Yeah. Anyone else? Comments? Things they want to share? Not really. Shall I continue?
Sure.
So yeah, something else I want to share is picking up actually on what I said. It was my focus. When it's very important when you're consciously working on your self-image, you're aware of things. You're focused. So you really, your attention goes to that and you're aware of it. But the danger is, and the nature of humans is, until your shift becomes a new habit, because that's actually what we have to do. You have to rewrite your old habit into a new habit, right? But until it hasn't formed a new habit, automatically, unconsciously, if you don't pay attention, you will fall back in your standard thinking because this is your comfort zone. It's like a thermostat in a house. That's how we are. 25 degrees. You open the window, it's cold outside, but the thermostat makes the temperature, keeps it to 25 degrees. And that's how we are programmed. We always flip back so we really have to, in the process of pushing that limit, the 25 degrees, we're pushing it to 30 degrees, to 35. But until it's set in stone to 30, 35 degrees, until then, we're always going to go back to the previous standard. Is that clear?
Mm.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Caroline, you wanted to share something?
No, I know about, well, I call them goat tracks in the mind. And if you're trying to change a behavior or try something new, it's very easy to slip back into old habits. And the goat tracks are well trodden. And yeah, it's hard work to
Mm-hmm.
keep going with that. If you've got a goal in mind, yeah,
Yeah.
it's hard.
It's hard, but it's so worth it.
It's still worth it. Self-development.
It's so worth it. Yeah, to get the good stuff, right?
Yeah.
One of the things I was just thinking about a little bit ago was just the kind of environment, the dynamics that we grow up around, these sort of models of how we exist in a social environment. Um, just like you were saying, feeling intimidated by other people. Um, I've just been noticing a lot. It seems like we watch a lot of nature shows, my wife and I, and it seems like there's been a really big paradigm shift in the last 20 years or so. Maybe it's more recent, of the way that we see nature relating to itself. And I just know that when we were growing up, you didn't really look at other species as being really integrated into a kind of dynamic that each species had relationships with other species. I felt like we were taught to see nature as just this competitive thing, things we're trying to figure out how to overcome and basically defeat others that they were in competition for food and reproduction, and that species amongst other in relation to each other, it's not even competitive, it's more like they just don't really matter. But now it seems like you see so many examples. I mean, a lot of it just gets perpetuated on social media, but just that species that you would think don't actually have a relationship kind of do, and sometimes they can be very loving or just very, very supportive in different ways that don't really make sense in terms of the kind of the way we tend to hierarchically think of existing in an environment. Like we just tend to think of, we have to compete and somehow dominate in order to like get what we want, as opposed to figuring out ways to kind of like support each other and make things happen. You know, it's that whole sort of single person theory in history. It's like no individual ever did anything without other people's help. We're all completely reliant on an environment of a social structure that we have some degree of control over. A lot of it we don't, but we do make choices about who we choose to interact with and who we share energy and resources. And
Yeah.
that's given me some sense of hope recently. Is just thinking of like, part of it is just hope for humanity in itself. I think we've distanced ourselves for so long from nature that we think that somehow it's okay to live in a city and see a tree coming out of the concrete, but it's like that's not really nature. Like we're still part of nature, but we've kind of insulated ourselves from dynamics of what life is.
Mm.
Totally.
More
Totally. And
we could be taking advantage of.
Yeah, totally, totally. We're so disconnected, and I believe that we got it all wrong for forever, and now we're shifting into the right um, way of thinking. Um, yeah, we got it so wrong. I remember I grew up in the city as well, and I remember when I went to South Africa at some point, and I saw wildlife for the first time in their natural habitat, and I was shocked. I was shocked because I realized that seeing animals in a zoo was normal for me, and seeing animals in their real environment was abnormal for me. So yeah, and we are nature. It's not something separate from us. We are nature. And then coming back on what you said as well, what other people think, we have no control of how other people think. The only thing that we can control is ourselves. So, yeah, I believe that we have to let go of wanting to control everything that's outside of us, but it all starts within to shift out of us. And we were thought to, when we want to change in the past, we had to create something differently in outside ourselves. And that is following me the biggest mistake ever. It all starts within. And now we feel like it's difficult, but actually it's also because we're not used to it. Is it really difficult? We're started believing it's difficult, but is it? I don't know. If you want to believe it's difficult, it's going to be difficult.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So, yeah. Any other comments?
For me, it's about choices. You can choose to find things difficult, or you can choose to. I sometimes ask my question that what's the best thing that could happen right now, or what I could do right now, and I think it depends on your perception of nature and connectedness. But I've grown up in being surrounded by, nature and rivers and lovely garden. And I had a great childhood. And that, although my mother always told me I was a bit fat and I shouldn't wear that. Sorry. I get flippant when I'm nervous. But I think you can choose to embrace nature. And I'm lucky I don't live in a city. I live in the countryside. And I just have to step outside my door and it's just beautiful. And you can walk and you can look and you can photograph. And I feel connected. And that's when I'm at my most creative, I suppose, when I'm in nature. And I choose to do that. I could choose to live nearer to family, say, and go and move into town. But I'm very happy. It's kind of a bubble, my Caroline's bubble, but that's fine, and I'm at peace with that side of where I live, and being connected within nature. And if I wasn't there, I think I'd be very unhappy, and I'd be trying to find ways to get out, to find a happiness and so that I can project this image of myself and know inside that I'm happy with what I've got, and it's enough to be like that. I don't have to look too far to find joy and satisfaction. But I know at the moment that there's a change of self-image because of circumstances, and I'm looking for, my next adventure, as we were discussing earlier, Michelle, and how I can best project myself and come to a place where I'm happy again, and sort of over the loss of a certain part of myself.
Yeah. 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 Well, thank you for sharing. Well,
That's a pleasure.
I actually create, in case you are interested to have some support to change your self-image, I actually created, I'm going to run a 5-week experience to unlock, to rewrite your self-image, let's say. And it's a journey you're going to take together every Thursday, starting October 10th.
Okay.
During 5 weeks. It's going to take each time between an hour and a half each session.
Okay.
And what are we gonna do? So we're gonna use our camera, take self-portraits. Yes. But I'm gonna support you to first implement a proven method to shift your self-image.
Yeah.
I'm gonna really use a method to do that. I'm gonna support you to how to create images of yourself. Tips
Okay.
practically also how you can do that easily. And the goal is really to create stunning images of yourself, imagining yourself, your future self, and express that in an image.
Okay.
Very transformative. On top of that, to support that, I'm going to teach you to journal, because as I said, words are very powerful, really very powerful. They carry so much. It's really I was joking about it, but it's the truth. You better watch out what you say and what you write. But just to support that process, to make things come out of you, things that you can't see, and to process to support you. And so I'm gonna help you to have a daily process of journaling. It's 20 minutes a day journaling. That's not too much. Something I'm doing myself every day as well. And I see it's unbelievable what it does. It's such a simple thing, but it has a huge impact on my life. And then with those images and the text, we're going to create a visual diary. For those who are interested in the digital version, I will guide you to make a digital version. And for those who prefer to have analog printed, I'm going to guide you how to do that. So at the end of the 5 weeks, you're going to have your visual diary with images and text.
Okay.
And it's going to support you to shift that we're going to start first with a goal, something you want to work on for yourself, and that's going to be your topic. And I want to make it accessible for everyone, because I believe that everyone should be supported by that. And I created actually 2 different versions to step in for everyone accessible. It's only $123 for 5 weeks. And I created a second version, which is $234 for the 5 weeks. And the second version, there I'm going to send you weekly affirmations that you can listen to support you on top of it. And I'm adding a one-on-one call just specifically to have a one-on-one call to work deeper on your project, on whatever you want to work on. So I'm just putting that out. If you're interested,